All right. Quick review before we go into the official. So greetings, everybody. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is February 1st, 2022. It's 8:11 p.m. And this is the Dr. Julius Nairi CBPM Atlanta Division 421 Study Group Officers Training. We've opened it up to all officers in the UNIA-ACL. On tonight's call, on tonight's class, we have myself, Brother John, Atlanta Division 421. We have First Vice President, Brother Onasius, Atlanta Division 421. We have First Lady Vice President, Sister Ra Ebony, Division 421. We have President Everett of Division 106 in Baltimore, and Lady President, Sister K, Division 121 in Philadelphia, and Brother Bruce, I believe, of Division 106 in Baltimore. So it's 6 on the call tonight. With that, we'll get started with as always, we'll get started with our official proceedings, pledge to the flag, and we're not doing the anthem or anything, but we'll do the pledge to the flag. If you would, please repeat after me. I commit my body, mind, and spirit.
I pledge my body,
mind, and spirit
to the protection, defense, and security.
To the protection, defense, and security.
Of the red, the black, and the green.
Of the red,
black, and green.
Black and the green.
I dedicate my life to the redemption of Mother Africa.
I dedicate
my life to the redemption of Mother Africa.
And the liberation of her scattered black children.
And the liberation
of her scattered black children.
I accept for myself and my descendants.
I accept for myself and my descendants
the teachings of universal African nationalism.
The teachings
of universal African nationalism.
And I promise that our children will be instilled.
And I promise
that our children will be instilled
with the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
With the purpose and knowledge of themselves as African people.
In order that the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
In order that
the cause of our struggle will neither falter nor fail.
Until all black people are free and united.
Until all black people are free and united.
Through one God.
One God.
One aim.
One aim.
And one destiny.
One destiny.
Race first.
Race first.
So tonight we're going to be reading lesson 18 titled Commercial and Industrial Transactions. We'll be going over questions from lesson 17, which was communism. But before we go into communism, I had a review question on propaganda. And I wanted to ask everybody, do we know what the UNIA-ACL's form of propaganda is?
Garvey Voice.
Garvey's Voice, as well as
Negro World? No, that was old. The Whirlwind?
That's ours, that's local, but Garvey's Voice, as well as the government website. So I wanted to just show those. I think we showed these. Meeting, but if you haven't, if you're not aware, if your members aren't aware, we do have a website, UNIA-ACLgovernment.com. So this is what we should be promoting, as far as the official website of the organization and the government. That's
Brother
one
John,
thing.
is our mass meetings considered propaganda or as well or no?
Yes, but I'm talking about, I meant officially from like parent body.
Okay.
So something that all of us, no matter where we are, could tap into from the parent body's perspective. Because back in Garvey's time, you know, and that's what we try to do now, Garvey's voice, but he was, you know, we were trying to get the message from the source, you know, and we should still be connected in that sense. Not necessarily saying we're parents of President General Michael Duncan, but we should all be on the same page, you know, and we should all be sharing the same propaganda. And secondly was Garvey's Voice magazine, which is actually on the website as well. But we should be promoting and, you know, promoting these as well as trying to use these as fundraisers for our division. So I just wanted to retouch on that from a propaganda perspective, kind of bring it home to us, you know, and what we can do today. My thoughts, at least. Any questions, comments, or any thoughts on that? Okay. Not. We'll go straight into lesson 17. Lesson 17 is titled Communism. We read this last week. So first question, what is communism? What is the desire of propaganda? I think it's what is the desire of communism. Just copy and paste. What is communism? What is the desire of communism? Yes, that's what it is.
Communism is the white man's creation to the lower class whites to work together and go against capitalism.
Anybody want to add, or anybody want to add to it?
Yeah, that was good. I can add on. I think it was the white man's creation to like fix his own problems. I think fix his own problems is something that was said in there, something like that.
Yes. Excellent response from the brothers. What Garvey said on page 134, and I got to pull, I'm going to have to pull the book up, so let me just do it now. I thought I was ready today. All right, I ain't going to do it right now. I'm doing what I need to. Garvey says in the book, communism is a white man's creation to solve his own political and economic problems. And its goal is to empower the white working class over the capitalistic class of the race. So that's something we'll touch on more in detail later, but those are the general terms of how Garvey described it. And again, and I also added a Google definition. Google defines communism as a political theory advocating class war and leading to a society in which all property is publicly owned and each person's works is paid according to their abilities and needs. So we kind of have to live in a world of duality, of where we have to understand their definition and how they talk, but we also have to have our own type of lingo and our own way of defining things within our organization. So I'm not saying that this is necessarily how we have to define communism now, but this is how Garvey defined it, and that's what I'm trying to communicate. Any questions on that? Okay, next question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Karl Marx.
Nothing.
Was there a question on the previous one, or there's an answer to number 2? Okay. Well, on number 2, yes. Who created communism? First question, and Brother Onassis answered it correctly. Karl Marx. And what did Karl Marx know about African rule? What does Garvey say Karl Marx thought about Africans?
He didn't know much about them. He didn't write about them. He didn't know much about them.
Absolutely. He knew very little about Negroes. He thought and wrote less about them. So the creator, the founder of this ideology, didn't have us in mind, basically. Questions, comments on that? Who created communism, and what Karl Marx thought about Africans or Negroes? What type of people are empowered in a communist government, according to Garvey?
The lowest class.
Type of people? Lowest class?
The whites.
Absolutely. Garvey added most ignorant, prejudiced class of the white race. But yeah, and generally the lower class of the white race were those designed to be empowered in communist government. Any questions? Or I need to go to the book on that one. Go ahead.
I'm just having like a time like wrapping my mind around how he views communism and how he views capitalism, because I don't see how people. I understand how, you know what I mean, you can raise your earning capacity and communism because everything is supposed to be spread out and equal, so that everybody has a chance to live. Nobody is starving, nobody is hungry or whatever, you know what I mean? It's one of the main principles. But under, I don't know, I'm just, never mind. I'll just sit back and listen. I'm sorry, but I just, you know what I mean? Because my view of communism and his view of communism, you know what I mean? From what I'm reading, it seems more like he's describing modern day capitalism, where you have, you know what I mean, where this theory that these poor whites can raise up. Whereas communism, to me, we all come together and work together so that, you know what I mean, we all have.
I suppose what he's trying to say, even in communism, white people, even the poor white people, still don't like black people. So they'll ask for you to become a part of their group because they recognize that you are low as well, even while knowing that you are still lower than them. So they'll try to, appease to your appeals because the idea and concepts is for everything to be equal. However, we know even within that, it's just not, because they're still going to support their race first. They still don't like that. That's pretty much ultimately goal. Even white trash don't like black people.
All right, thank you.
Brother Bruce, I understand what you're saying, and it takes some time to, we got to keep reading Garvey's work to understand where he's coming from. In this context, because I kind of thought the same way you thought, like capitalism is bad, capitalism is bad, and capitalism is probably worse than communism. But what Garvey is saying, when you look at it, he's talking about the people that are in power. So when you look at capitalism, the people that are in power are the wealthy. And Garvey, whether it's right or wrong, but he equates that with, more refined living, as opposed to what we talk about later on, the ignorant prejudice. Well, they're still prejudiced even though they're rich. But the more ignorant people being in power. And he talks about capitalism, and it's a question in here why he talked about capitalism being a benefit, why he thought capitalism was a benefit. But I didn't want to say too much. But that's a great question. Those are the type of questions that we should be asking. Trying to translate, Garvey's philosophy into modern day, and what we currently know about these theories. So that's a great question.
Can I add to that a little bit, President John?
Yes, go ahead.
Just real quick.
Vice President.
Real quick, in economics, they have two types of economies. They have what's called a planned economy, and as a market-driven economy. A planned economy is driven by a group of planners, group of government planners. So basically, in a communist society, those group of people who will be planning the government will be those ignorant whites raising themselves to that point of planning the functions of the economy, which they wouldn't plan it to benefit us. They will only plan it to put us as the servants to help this new communist government's work. While a market-driven society is all about the market. So I think what he's saying is that those people who will be in power planning the things, those white people won't look out for us.
Yes, and just to final comment, then I'll let you respond, Brother Bruce. But we have to understand, in all of these philosophies and ideologies, we are the minority that are being absorbed, into something else that's already been created. And most of the time, it's not created for us, So that's the bigger sense of why Garvey was against communism. Brother Bruce, did that clarify anything or make it more confusing? Brother Bruce, you there? You on mute?
Oh, I'm not Brother Bruce, but yeah, that's clear.
Okay.
Yeah. That's our Brother James, first vice, Brother John.
Okay, sorry about that, Brother James.
Oh man, you're good. I've been called.
My apologies. So as the first question, as the previous question, I don't even remember what the question was. Let me see. What type of people are empowered or seek to be empowered in a communist government? And Garvey says, while it may be a good thing for them, it would be a bad thing for the Negroes who fall under the government of the most ignorant, prejudiced class of the white race. The ignorant white man is cruel and prejudiced because of his very ignorance. So Garvey relates, ignorance and education, to a level of culturedness, to an extent. And the less education, the more ignorant you are, the less likely you'll be able to run a good government. But I don't want to go too far because we got the next question is in there. Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and ask it. Question number 4. Let me switch my screen. Any questions on types of people that are seek to be empowered in a communist government? Next question, what is an enemy of communism? And I'd like to say why, if you know. What is an enemy of communism that Garvey talked about in the book?
Capitalism?
Capitalistic white man.
Why?
I can't remember. Dang, hold on.
This is where Brother James. This is where we were going into. This is where Garvey gets into, his differences between capitalism and communism.
I'm not sure.
Nobody else?
Was it his own, for his own benefit, something like that?
Enemy of communism. It was capitalist white man was the right answer. But yes, and it has to do with benefit. But basically, capitalism seeks to maximize profit. So 2 ways to maximize profit. You can either increase your price that you're selling it for, or lower the cost to make it. So capitalism seeks the lowest bidder when it comes to producing something. And that's why, from a free market standpoint, Garvey felt that capitalism would be more beneficial to Negroes, because, you know, we could offer our wages at our own, you know, our own prices. But let me answer this and then hold your questions or responses. Garvey said the capitalistic white man is an enemy of the enemy of communism for the preservation of his own interests, if nothing more. So it's almost like they can't exist in the same realm. Or you may see how dangerous it is. It would be a place where very strengthened members of government dictating control by him. While the capitalistic system is ruthless and bad, it nevertheless gives the Negro a chance for employment competitive with the working classes of white men, for the purpose of extracting profit from labor, irrespective of the color of labor. The Negro, not being an industrial employer, shares, therefore, the opportunity to labor in competition with the white worker only because the white capitalist is willing to use anybody who can contribute the most profit to his industries, regardless of color. So it's not a good thing, but he's basically saying, you know, because capitalists see money, they see green, you know, so they're willing to use, and for lack of a better term, you know, the lowest bidder and whoever is willing to do the work at the lowest cost. Any questions, comments? I felt like I was talking for a while on that. No questions on that? Okay. Enemy to communism, capitalism, capitalistic white man basically seeking the lowest bidder. You know, that's the way I read it. Capitalistic white man is the enemy to communism for the preservation of his own interests, if nothing more. That's what we just read. Why did communists want to invite Negroes to join their ranks? Why did Garvey say that communists wanted Negroes to join their ranks? Y'all on mute? What's going on? Nobody know this one?
From what I took from it is power in the numbers. You know what I mean? Because it builds up their party, even though, like you were saying in the very beginning, it's really only for like their benefit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because they have the numbers.
Yes. Excellent answer, Brother James. Anybody else want to respond or give them insight?
Well, I was going to say the same. It's pretty much to just utilize the Negroes as you know, once they get up to their capitalistic point themselves, is just to do the same thing as the capitalists do. If that is the understanding is that capitalists use the Negroes. Their goal is to do the exact same.
Both of y'all are correct. And Garvey does speak about that in the text. I think he speaks on that a little bit later on. But there's something else that he mentions earlier in regards to Black people being labeled as communists.
You talking about sending them off to war?
No.
Oh, okay.
Not that.
I know you said something about to convince them that they're communists, but I'm not sure that's what you mean.
Why would communists want Black people to be considered communists, other than the fact of general support and just making communist numbers bigger?
Weren't communists the hated group at that point? Outcasts, blacklisted?
Yes, we can say that.
Because well, I mean, if the ulterior motive is to continue to get us further out of society, because you know what I mean. At that time, if I'm correct, I don't know if this was before they started blacklisting communists and communists and not allowing them to hold jobs. You couldn't hold any public positions. Some places wouldn't even let you come and shop in their place if they knew that you were a communist. People were turning you in. Like I said, like I'm not really sure what year this is, you know what I mean? But I know all of those things happened to people that belong to the Communist Party in the beginning of the century.
Hey,
excellent.
Brother John. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sister K.
You can. Okay. I was just going to say that when I was reading the passage, it pretty much gave me the it pretty much gave me the feel like communists were like the Democrats. If we were to like kind of relate them to people he was talking about, specifically in the book, like parts of the of Pennsylvania, in which you couldn't go down, the sundown towns and things like that. So he was pretty much just saying that, white communists want Negroes to be communists just to join the numbers, just to, to be communists too. But there was no actual goal on allowing Negro people to be free forming and, live as they will. It's really just to make us servants too.
Yes.
And also, if we are not capitalists, we're not competing against them. We communists. So we not their competitor.
Yes, Brother Mason. Brother Everett, you were gonna say something?
Actually, I was taking all that, and there was some phenomenal points. When Brother James was talking something about a job, and I don't know why this is coming in my head, but for some reason, I got something saying. So when it was dealing with the question you said, and it doesn't make sense to me. But it was like he was saying something about so white they could pick their own race over our race of jobs. But I don't know why that would ring there, but it didn't make sense to me. You know what I'm talking about, Brother John?
Yes, I do. First thing, let me say to what Sister K said, being labeled a communist is worse than being labeled a Democrat. Being labeled a communist is an outsider, because there are different types of governments, democracy, autocracy, dictatorship, monarchy, socialism, communism. There's all different types. Democrat, Republican, that's two sides of the same coin. So, you're still playing the American game, no matter which one you choose. But when you start to say socialist or communist, now you're going outside of America and you're talking about, government ideologies outside of how we do things. And that's part of the reason why communism is such a bad label. But everyone is correct. But what Garvey says, he talked about it specifically in regards to employment. He said, so that if an employer has to decide between a white communist and a black communist, they'll choose the white communist. It's just another, reason for them not to employ us, basically. So he's looking at it from an economic standpoint. But I'll read it more in depth. Garvey says the idea of the communists inviting Negroes to join their ranks is to support their theory that Negroes are communists too. So that if a white employer has to decide between a black communist and a white communist, by the appeal of race, the white communists will get the consideration and the advantage. So, not only are we black now, which is already bad, but you're a communist too. So it's like two strikes. Therefore, the scheme coming from the white communists is to make Negroes communists. It is a vile and wicked scheme. The communists have created their own party and organization of which they are the international leaders. They alone, as executives, know the policy and designs of the Communist Party, which are kept from Negroes for the purpose of fooling them into a sense of false security. So we talked about the employment aspect, but again, as everybody else said, the organization aspect of having, Negroes be part of their organization that don't really know what's going on, and then you have ignorant people speaking for you in positions of leadership.
Can I say something, man, about like how that actually applies still to this day? And I think your lady president mentioned it when she was just like, it's like being like a Democrat, because anytime you have like a black politician that's coming up, you know what I mean, they get sucked into the Democratic Party. And although, you know what I mean, we have like a crazy number of black, you know what I mean, representatives, you know what I mean, we don't have any policies that represent us. You know what I mean? They get sucked into like this party, and it's just like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. But then, you know what I mean, once the laws and, you know what I mean, things come to get voted up on, like, for instance, the last little thing, you know what I mean, voting rights. All of a sudden now, you know what I mean, you got the vast majority, you got everybody ready to vote, but you know what I mean, there's always some little hiccup that allows it not to even go forward. Always, every single time, allows it not to go forward. You come up with the lynching law, always something for it not to come forward. But you have all like these representatives, but you don't have any, you know what I mean, any bills that represent the people, you know what I mean, that benefit the people that they're supposed to be representing. But yet, you know what I mean, you keep getting them and keep asking them to join the party and, you know what I mean, donate to this party and we got to do this for this party. And it's all about the party. It's all about the party. It's all about the party. It's not about our neighborhoods. It's all about the party. It's not about the people. It's about the party.
True.
It's for me, it's one of like the biggest things when I'm reading this and I'm, you know what I mean, thinking about present day. Yeah, they want you to be, you know what I mean, a part of this party, but that party isn't really going to do anything for you. They'll tell you that we're going to do this, and it's always, we'll get them next time.
I understand, and I'm glad you broke that down a little bit better for me, Lady President. Sister K, I understand what you were saying now in regards to the being labeled a Democrat.
Right. Give thanks. That was the only correlation, was just that they suck us in and promise us lots of things. And so it has the same kind of idealistic, to me, the correlation for me is sort of like just representing them as Republicans and Democrats. It seems like the capitalists are the Republicans and the communists are the Democrats, at least in this context.
Yeah. But yeah, anytime, and that's why I love Garvey, because he brought this awareness. But anytime we're a minority being invited to join something else when we don't have something of our own, we have to question that, and we've been taught that that's okay, and that's acceptable to just join everything that everybody else created, but don't create anything for ourselves. So, excellent points.
Can I? And I think that's one of the main reasons why they keep pushing for blacks to be in like the Democrat Party, because we have enough numbers and we have enough voting power to have our own political party. And that's the thing that people, you know what I mean, fail to recognize, that we have enough people, have enough numbers to be our own political party.
Yes, absolutely. We as the educated ones, we have to. We have the tough job of enlightening our brothers and sisters. But yes, you're absolutely right, my brother. We got to come together and realize the power that we have, in our own numbers. And that's what, like I said, that's why I love Garvey, because he's not only trying to bring us together in the United States, but globally. So we think about, 45 million or so here in the United States, but we usually try to talk about globally, and we say, nearly 2 billion globally. That's, it's a lot of power if we can bring it together. Don't need no other ideologies once we create our own. Next question. This is supposed to be a quick one. All the outrages in war, mob violence, extreme punishment were done by what class of people? Or people responsible for all outrages in war, mob violence, and extreme punishment?
The lowest class of whites.
Lowest class of white agents. Yes, sir. Any questions on that? Let me go to the book on that one. Next question. Who is the Negro's greatest enemy? Oh, I remember this one. It's close to the last one, but it's a little bit of spin on it. Who is the Negro's greatest enemy? We should know this. These are important things. Like Barbie says, what's the greatest weapon used against the Negro? You know, do we know that? But
Unintelligent white man.
Yeah. Correct. Yes. I was going to say ignorant white man, but yes. Garvey says the common white man who does not have enough intelligence to know the injury that he is doing to a race. That's the greatest enemy to our people. Any questions, comments on that?
Lyndon B. Johnson said you can take the poorest white man, and as long as you can tell him that he is better than a Negro, he'll give you the last dollar out of his pocket. I know I'm misquoting him, but it was pretty much to that effect. That's how deep the hate goes. It doesn't make a difference what position he is in. As long as you tell him that he is in a position higher than any one of us, then he's happy.
Yeah. I'm not one of them. Whatever we want to call it. All right. Keep moving. This is sounding repetitive. The mob has always been made of what type of people? What type of people make up the mobs?
The lowest class whites.
I'm about to say the answer is the same.
Well, how did I not? Well, I mean, maybe it's a repetitive message. Lowest class of white race. Common ignorant people from whom communists are made up and whom the party is intended to give political power and economic advantage. So I think this is what Garvey's trying to say. Like communism is basically was trying to be a party made of or led by, the people that are the greatest enemy to our race. So the lowest class, the white people, common ignorant, common ignorant white man seeking political and economic advantage. All right. Who carries the expense of economic improvements? Listen, I know this one. Who carries the expense of economic improvements? And I guess this would be like in a society, in a community, in a government. Who carries the expense of economic improvements? I had to go to the text on this one. I can feel it.
The intellectuals?
Who's that?
The intellectuals?
I was going to say the citizens.
Carries the expense. The intellectuals carry the expense. Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else?
It's always the weakest part of the population.
Yes, it's the weaker. It's the weaker. I'm trying to find where the answer is.
It's 137.
Greater exploitation of weaker people, page 137.
It is the evident that these economic improvements only come at the expense of the greater exploitation of weaker people. The weaker peoples before were the Chinese, the East Indians, and the Negroes.
Yes. There you go. Yes. Consider that socialists, communists, and trade unions of the white race are all advocating for higher wages, better living conditions, which is everybody wants those. It's evident that these economic improvements must only come at the expense of greater exploitation of weaker people. So, you know, that's how societies tend to work. You know, the weaker have to, you know, the ones that aren't organized, that don't necessarily have the ability to speak for themselves or speak for themselves properly, they get taken advantage of. And what Garvey's saying is, there was a time when the weaker people were Chinese, East Indians, and Negroes, but now the Chinese have gotten organized. The Indians are also organized. The only one left is the Negro, who is exposed to the most ruthless exploitation. So, any questions or comments on that?
Absolutely. Because when even with Garvey, when the Negroes tried to come together and unite and organize, what do, man? They do what they always do. They plant their spies. They get somebody that looks like us to come into and try to get other people to go against, you know what I mean, the organization. They send letters to your wife talking about how you womanize it. They do it all, man. They do everything they can to make sure that we never organize, to make sure that we never come together. And if all that fails, then, you know, I mean, you might find yourself in a real bad situation in the dark room one night.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But, you know, a lot of our people, they get into politics and things, and they you know, wish, you know, or try to create better policies, but unbeknownst to them, you know, those policies end up financially affecting, you know, the people that they're supposed to be representing. So it's always been like that.
And I don't even know why it's down there, because this is supposed to be serious. I don't know.
Yeah, Patrice Lumumba end up, you know what I mean, taking over his country, getting rid of the colonists out of his country. And Dulles, the one at the airport, is named after. You know what I mean? Paid $100,000 to have him killed.
Yeah.
It's always the same story, man. It's always the same story. Once you rise up and, man, you get, you know what I mean, you start bringing people, Black people together, you got to go.
Thank you, Brother James. We only got a couple questions left. Jump back over. If there's no questions, no other questions, comments on the expense of economic improvements. Second to last question. What must the Negro or African people do in regards to communism, and why? What must we do in regards to communism, and why must we do that?
I'm not sure of specific words, but the overall tone seems to be suggesting to stay away from that party and build for ourselves in our own party, in the UNIA.
Anybody want to add? Do you know why? I don't disagree, but why would you recommend that? Why must we do our own thing and stay away from their things?
Because Africans must be self-reliant and build for self and do for self as per the Constitution.
Ashe.
And because they only playing us.
Say again?
So they're only playing us like suckers, I think he said.
He did mention that. I don't think I got that far, but in summary, he said, "Let communists fight their own battles and stand back and watch the fight." You know, so we don't get involved in their fights. We let them do their own thing. We will be helping to bear the brunt of the battle with no guarantee that our conditions will be better, but objectively worse, because we will help to transfer government from the more intelligent, cultured in behavior to that of the ignorant, more prejudiced, and more cruel. So in summary, and again, Brother James, this was Garvey's, I think this is how Garvey was summarizing his comparison between capitalist leadership and communist leadership. Any questions, comments on what Garvey recommends our people do in regards to communism? And I think this would apply to pretty much any other ideology that's not UNIA.
Wasn't it something in the earlier lessons about the same old thing? Like when people started going at it, we just sit back and don't get involved. Let them go ahead and take each other out and wait for our opportunity. Wait for the opportunity for us to be able to take, you know what I mean? Wait for the opening for us to be able to take an advantage of the situation. I thought it was one of the earlier lessons.
We just read it recently. Lessons kind of run together at this point. I don't know if it was propaganda or previous lesson before that. But yes, you are right. Talked about the benefit of having people divided. Our transgressors, I think was the word he used, having them divided. All right, last question. Garvey says, when we're asked to join the Communist Party, what should our response be? When someone asks you to join the Communist Party, what should you tell them?
When I get to Russia, I'll join. When I get to Russia, I'll join.
When you get to Russia, you'll join?
Yeah.
Anybody else? He said when when you get to Russia, but not before then. So basically saying like when they get their stuff together, he'll join. But at that point, they'll all be back in Russia. So it really won't be a concern for us. So again, going back to the previous, let them do their thing, have their communist nation wherever they wish to have it. But it's no concern about us. Any other questions on communism before we move to the reading for tonight? That completes lesson 17. 5 lessons left. Lesson 18. We're going to Macius, if you would, please. We're going to go through lesson 15 tonight, and then we'll have 4 lessons left. I think we're doing that in three weeks. So, without further ado, First Vice President, please go for one. Brother Macius.
Lesson 18, commercial and industrial transactions. Commerce and industry are the feeding props of the economic life of the state, the community, or society as a whole. On these two foundations rests the universal system of exchange with its financial factors. Every progressive people and nation indulge in some form of commerce and industry, manufacturing or agricultural industry. It is by such activities that individuals find occupation within the normal life of the state. You are either an employer or an employee, big or small. The employees are those who work for the employers. The employers are those who employ the employees and pay them salaries or wages. The employers pay themselves salaries out of their profits or dividends. So both employer and employee live off commerce and industry. Those who do not work in this way are either wards of the state or recipients of charity or people who live off the earnings of others, which flow from those who are industrious enough to work either as an employer or an employee. Every self-respecting man finds an occupation either as an employee or as an employer, according to his choice, his ability, and general fitness. He earns a livelihood. All men try to earn as much as they possibly can. To do so, they generally equip themselves for their occupation. A good laborer or worker qualifies himself for particular work as to demand the best reward on wages. The businessman, proprietor, or employer generally goes into the most profitable business so as to secure the largest amount of profit. The man without a business of his own, without training to perform a particular type of job, is always at a disadvantage in making a living. Great wealth is made out of commerce and industry. also the professions which depend upon commerce and industry. Commercial enterprises are of different kinds, as are industrial enterprises. In commerce, we have the grocery business, the lumber business, the ironmonger's business, the mercantile business or dry goods business, the clothing business, the tailoring business, retail and wholesale business of all kinds. Industrially, we have the manufacturing businesses, the manufacturers, the particular articles that manufactures the particular articles of commerce, while the farming industry produces such commodities that are necessary for human consumption. The industrious man must find an occupation in one of the other of these enterprises. He must have his own wholesale establishment or retail establishment. He must have his own factories or mills, either large or small. His capital may be $1 million or $10, according to the size of his enterprise. One proprietor has a chain of grocery stores, another has a push cart with his wares on it, but both of them are proprietors. At the end of a week, one may make a profit of 10,000 in investment, the other may make a profit of $10. This is due to the difference in the size of the business. So a man who is enterprising with little capital can start a business of his own equally or simultaneously with the man who has large capital. One farmer may be the proprietor of 10,000 acres of land. Another farmer may be the proprietor of 1 acre of land, but both of them are farmers and proprietors. Often it is the small proprietor, often it is the small proprietor who ultimately becomes a large proprietor through the success of his small venture. Most of the successful businessmen in the world started with a small amount of capital. Rockefeller started with $1, and so did Carnegie. Henry Ford started with less than $50, but they both became great trust magnates in less than half a century. They opened the way for enterprising men who are willing to start with a modest or small beginning and work steadily to build a business of greater magnitude. The examples of small men starting small businesses and building them up to massive concerns are common. In England, Joseph Lyons, a Jew, starting with less than $10 in capital, built the great Joseph Lyons Company tea room and restaurant, syndicates that control the catering trade in all of Great Britain. This was also true of Thomas Lipton, who afterwards became Sir Thomas Lipton, the great tea magnate of England. This kind of enterprising success has its counterpart in nearly every country in the world where small men have grown big by entering a business and sticking to a business until it becomes a colossal success. Many an Italian millionaire started with a pushcart selling oranges and bananas in the streets of New York and Chicago. Many Greeks also became millionaires by starting with a small lunch counter at some side street corner with capital of not more than $10. Many an Assyrian peddler started peddling with a box slung across his shoulder containing assorted merchandise not valued at more than $5 to become a millionaire or merchant, prince, and proprietor of a dry goods establishment later. Many an enterprising boy started out with 35 cents to buy newspapers and sell them, the morning and afternoon editions, and climbed up to be a great newspaper publisher or proprietor. The fault with the Negro in business, commercial, or industrial has been his inability to appreciate starting at a given point and climbing steadily, while other races is while other races have been willing to start from the bottom and climb up. The Negroes have always desired to start from the top. Therefore, he comes down. No success ever came from the top. It always from the bottom up. The Negro must learn to climb from the bottom up. He will never be an he will never be an industrial or commercial factor until he has learned the principles of commercial and industrial success. These principles are as much open to him as to anybody else. Find a particular kind of business that you would like to engage yourself in because you can make it profitable and start it with whatever capital you have. You can start selling newspapers with a capital of 25 cents. You can start selling oranges with a capital of $1. You can start selling stockings for ladies with a capital of $2. You can start selling ties for gentlemen with a capital of $2. Find out what your neighbors want most and are willing to buy. Start selling it to them. If not in a shop, by going door to door. If your capital is larger, your opportunities become larger and easier. but no Negro need sit down at his doorstep and mourn his back luck if he has 25 cents in his pocket to start a business. If you invest 25 cents wisely, 9 o'clock in the morning, by 6 o'clock in the evening, you may have 50 cents. If you eat 10 cents for that day and carry over 40 cents the next day as capital, from 9 o'clock to 6 o'clock on the next day, you may have 75 cents. Eat another 10 cents out of the 75 cents, which will leave you with a capital for the next day of 65 cents. Your 65-cent capital may bring you 90 cents. Eat 10 cents and carry over 80 cents for the following day, and at 6 o'clock, the day you may have $1.20. Eat 10 cents and carry over the 110 to the next business or the next day at 6 o'clock. And then the next day, you may have $1.50. And so you follow this method for 1 year. At the end of that year, your capital in business may be $25, and your income may be $5 on that day, out of which you provide your food and still have a large capital to face the next day. In 5 years, your capital may be $1,000. In 10 years, your capital may be $10,000. In 50 years, you may be a millionaire. That is how Rockefeller did it. That is how Carnegie did it, and they left their impression upon the world as self-made men. The Negro is going to look at Marshall Field or Sears and Roebuck in Chicago, John Wanamaker in Philadelphia, or Gordon Selfridge in London, England, and say, I want to work like that. The dreamer will never start because nothing starts that way. Wanamaker had to climb from the ground to the top of his skyscraper by perseverance and plotting, and so did Selfridge and Marshall Field. They all started from the ground floor, climbing up. The Negro must start from the ground floor of commerce and industry and climb up. When he can make a good handkerchief, then later he will make a gross, and then a million gross with his factory going at top speed. When he can make a single tie successfully, then he will make his gross, then hundreds of gross, then thousands of gross. His factories will hum and buzz with activity. Businesses are necessary. Shops, stores, wholesale, and retail and factories. These are the places where the majority of the people are employed outside of the farm. The Negro, to be employed and to be his own employer, must have his independent farms, stores, factories, and mills. But he must start them as the white man did, growing from a single room of industry into the mighty factory on the hillside of the plain. Without commerce and industry, a people perish economically. The Negro is perishing because he has no economic system, no commerce and industry. There are tricks in every business. Never go into any business until you know all the tricks thereof. Otherwise, you are bound to fail. If you like to indulge or engage yourself in a certain line of business, spend as much time as you possibly can investigating from your friends, acquaintances, or whoever you can approach who is already in that business or knows about that business, so as to have all the information necessary about it before you start. It is the people who know of the tricks in trade that make the most profit out of the trade. If you are going to sell ripe bananas on a truck through the streets, find out how long a banana fully ripe will last in handling, so that you may gauge the time of sale of the bananas, that they may not spoil on your hands. So with oranges, salt, fish, meat, ribbons, hats, shoes, or anything that time and age will affect. If you don't know about the particulars of these things and invest in them, you will find yourself losing money instead of making it. No one goes into business just for fun or pleasure, but for profit and results. Study all the possible means of making profit and getting good results out of the business in which you are to engage yourself. A democracy is the safest kind of government for persons of individual initiative who desire to go into business to live to live under, because it gives every man a chance to do business more safely. As a fact, the capitalist of today was a laborer or worker of yesterday. Most of the capitalists of our present age were workers 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, or 5 years ago. Hence, the man who wants to go into business commercially, industrially, or agriculturally and win a fortune for himself cannot and should not be a communist, because communism robs the individual of his personal initiative and ambition or the result thereof. Democracy, therefore, is the kind of government that offers to the individual the opportunity to rise from a laborer to the status of a capitalist or employee. Property. In acquiring property for commercial, industrial, or personal purposes or use, always see that you get value for your money. The property market is regulated by the real estate brokers or agents and the mortgaging and trust companies who take mortgage on property. These people create the rise and fall in property values to suit their own conveniences and their own profit. When they can get the public to buy at high value, they induce the public to do so. When the public will not buy enough to ensure their profit, they reduce the value of property and then encourage the buying of same. When the buying takes a gradual raise, they inflate the values again to make the public pay more for what they have started to buy again. As far as Negroes are concerned, the custom of real estate brokers and mortgaging companies has always been to sell them property at one fourth, one third, and sometimes one half, and other times 100% higher than the real value. When Negro is ready to sell, he never gets half of what he paid for his property, except in exceptional cases. It is always suggested that his ownership and particularly his occupancy carries depreciation. Therefore, to be safe when the Negro is purchasing property, he should first go to the official registry of property transfers in his community for a record of titles to find out the price paid for said property by the last purchaser so that he will know how much he's being charged in excess of the last sale price. He should also go to the government registry where the particular property is assessed for taxation to find out the real value from the government point of view for the property. Government assessed value on property is always about two-thirds of its ordinary market commercial value, and one-third to the government assessment. And you will add one-third to the government assessment, and you will find the real market value of the property. Never pay in excess of this value except you can afford to stand the loss to suit your own convenience. Because when you want to sell your property, that is the method others will adopt to find out its real value. Always be careful and watch your mortgage or the person you have bought the property from to whom you owe balances after you have paid off the excess value of the property and started to pay on the real value. When the mortgager or the seller of the property sells it to you in excess of its value, he is always friendly and tolerant while you are paying off the excess value because he realizes he is the one who is benefiting all the time. But when you start to pay on the real value of the property to have equity in it, that will make it marketable equity. He becomes nervous in the belief that you may pay off property and own it. The more you pay off on the real value of the property, the more nervous he becomes because he is always counting on your inability to pay for the property so as to foreclose on you to sell the property a second time. Just make a double profit out of the excess value. That is to say, if he sells you the property originally at an excess value of $1,000, he will encourage you to pay off the $1,000 with tolerance because all that is gross profit. But he is always hoping to have the property to sell to another person at another excess value of $1,000. He can only have it when you have forfeited your regular payments on the real value to make it possible for him to foreclose. Therefore, he may trick you into being off guard to pay your first interest and seeking fun regularly. Then, in the first lapse of unpreparedness, he serves you by foreclosing and gets the property in his hands again for his second attempt. This is the method of all usurers who take mortgages and property and who deal with property as a business. If you will investigate, you will find that the majority of Negroes in every country have lost their property in this way. Charitable institutions. Charity suggests that sympathy and goodwill of the fortune for the unfortunate. The poor we shall have, the poor we shall have with us always, and no one knows who shall be the poor. And so we become kindly in our behavior and disposition towards those who are unable to help themselves through misfortune or bad circumstance of any kind. To properly dispense kindness, to properly dispense kindness to those in need Society decides on the establishment of institutions for charity. These may be hospitals, homes for the aged, homes for the blind, founding institutions, asylums, etc. All well-organized races have such institutions for their own and contribute to it and support them. The Negro must also be interested in the founding and the keeping of such institutions for his own people. In giving charity to a worthy cause, nothing is lost. In fact, it's like casting your bread upon the waters to come back to you after many days. You may help to do good to a member of your race without personally knowing the person, and 10 years hence, some relative of that person may help some relatives of yours without knowing them. It is the bread coming back upon the waters. To give charity outside your race is probably sending it too far away. But to give it within your race is probably handing it to your own relative. In fact, charity begins at home. Your race is much nearer to you than a neighboring one. So always find time to bestow charity upon your race first. Every Negro helped from the ground to stand up is another man set on the journey of racial responsibility. When possible, always seek to help your Negro brother. Never allow him to fall, because as low down as he goes, he may ultimately pull you down with him. As high up as you can send him, he might ultimately pull you up with him. Let us then push every one of the race up and not down. To help a Negro boy or girl to become a useful man or woman is probably to assist in giving to the world a great character who never would have found himself or herself but for the early help he received from you or your charitable institutions. Try to educate boys and girls who have no parents. Try to assist those who have no one to depend on. Never let orphans go astray or fall into the hands of other races. They will only make servants of them. If you help them within the race, they may yet become the leaders of the race in some particular lines of success. Before you give to others of not your race, think first how much your race needs it and place it there. Never be unkind to your race. Never allow the members of your race to die in poverty. It is your fault they do. Always put yourself in the position of the unfortunate fellow and ask, how would I like to be in his stead? If your feelings and conscience rebel against his condition, then help him out of it. If you can, and as much as you do unto him, so may others do unto you in your time or hour of need. Whenever you find your own racial institutions worthy, support them. In any community in which you live, always seek to have your own charitable institutions. If the public funds are used for charity, then seek to get a portion for your group, separate and distinct from that of others, because you may not desire charity for yourself for the time being. Why should you not support the appeal for charity for those of our race who may need it? One may be prosperous today on his own initiative and account and be misadventure lose the natural ability of self-initiative to become dependent upon charity. You may lose your eyes, arms, or legs. You may lose your health without contributing to it personally, but purely by an accident. In that case, you would become a recipient of charity without your expecting it or contributing to the cause. So charity should always be maintained for its own good to benefit those who may be unfortunate enough to need it. And the next person to need it may be you. No one can tell. So never frown upon a worthy cause and never refuse to give and support if you can afford it. All right.
Thank you, First Vice President. That completes the reading for Lesson 18, titled Commercial and Industrial Transactions. We talked a lot about charity at the end and property in the middle. We have business making profit in the beginning. I'll open the floor. Any questions, comments in regards to reading tonight?
We still see the property thing as alive and doing well today. With them, like you said, it loses property. You buy a house, it automatically loses value just because you win it. And if you turn around and try to sell that house, they're going to undercut you. They're going to, you know what I mean? Because you selling it. I think it was, I don't know if y'all seen it or whatever, it was in the news or on like the internet or something. A black couple end up getting like their white friends to pose as the homeowners, and they end up getting a few $100,000 more for their house than they would have if they would have themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Still, you know, we're still being affected by that today in similar forms. Yeah. Any other questions? Any comments? I'll touch on something briefly. But one of the things that first caught my attention was how much, because I'm big, I mean, like, you know, I'm big on the reading and stuff, but just how much time and writing Garvey spent, you know, breaking down that 10-cent profit thing. It seemed fairly simple and straightforward, you know, just flip your money, you know, eat off of as little as you can, and, you know, at the end of the day, you'll have, you know, more than you started with, and keep doing that. But for me, it was just interesting for an individual like Garvey to be talking in these terms, you know, like he was, you know, responsible. I'm not going to say he was the richest, but he was responsible for a very wealthy organization, you know, buying multiple ships, you know, owning multiple properties, you know, in the organization's name. So I'm thinking, you know, he would have been very used to big numbers. But the fact that he would break it down to this level of, you know, 10 cents, you know, break, you know, double your 10 cents, you know, eat 10 cents, you know, you'll have 25 cents tomorrow, and, you know, $5 at the end of the year. I was like, wait a minute, that's kind of like, and today, you know, $25 at the end of the year, an income of $5 in that day. But it was just small numbers, and his attention to detail kind of caught my attention. But I think he's just trying to stress the importance of being able to start small and be consistent. That's all I wanted to say.
You know, one of the other things is, you know, he used to charge people to come for like lectures and everything to raise money. And yeah, like you said, you know what I mean, with the small number, you know what I mean, and it makes you think like, I paid $1, you know what I mean, to come and hear this man speak. And he's right. If I would have just started, you know what I mean, if I got $1 to come and hear him speak, then I got $1 to start my own business. So like you said, when he started with something small, it makes you think like, you know what I mean, if you're in the auditorium and you're thinking like, wait a minute, man, I paid $2 to get in here. I paid $1 to get in here. Next time I can use my dollar to, you know what I mean, do blah, blah, blah. Yeah. That's very interesting.
But yeah, that's one thing I love about Garvey, you know, like as far and as successful as he was in life, you know, even in these lessons, he makes it very practical, you know, and he kind of eliminates any obstacles as to why we can't do something, you know, like we can, if you got 10 cents, you can start. And today I would say, you know, $1, maybe $10, but if we have that, you know, we should be able to invest it in something, flip it, and be consistent.
It's like he thought about every person within our race, you know, especially how this goes to charity too, right after this. After he's talking about these small numbers where anybody can relate to, like you're saying, the person paid $1 to get into the thing, everybody has $1. So he kept it small where anybody can relate to it, and then he goes to the man who needs charity, who has nothing. And if somebody pours into him, he can use that $1 to start a business too. So I like the fact that he thinks about everybody within our race, from the bottom all the way to the top, and just believes in the potential of everybody, and that we can all tap into.
Yeah. But again, I mean, in lesson, I believe 7 or something, we talk about man and how, you know, we still have to be careful. But I think Garvey was what's the right word? Optimistic, about the outlook of our people and our race. And I have to think that, the fact that he did what he did and he left what he left, somewhat prophetic. I don't like to call people prophets, but his ability to say things at that time and have certain, instill certain principles that we still carry today and hold pride in today. Obviously, he was doing something right. But yes, business. I think it talks about business. Again, this is 3 sections. So business in the beginning, which touches on the economy aspect of profit, but he goes in depth about starting small, and the importance of being able to start small. And I think that's something that we here in Atlanta, we need to discuss and, be okay with, is starting small. Sometimes we might not have, a big $100,000 building, but we got some things that we can do. So start small, then property. Again, going back to economy and the importance of profit, but and paying our bills, making sure our things are paid for. We have some level of ownership. Then it ends with charity and charitable institutions. So that builds on the aspect of institutions, but as well as principles of assisting the needy and reclaiming the fallen. So we have a responsibility as Garveyites to be charitable. But not only that, we should also understand institutions of charity, and support those institutions that are there, that are doing work, but also create our own, because at the end of the day, we never know if we're going to need these institutions in charity. So that's all I have. Questions, comments before we move to close. Again, next week, lesson 19, winning mankind by kindness. A good lesson, short lesson. And then lesson 20, living for something, another good lesson. Should be short as well. Short. I'll look at we got a calendar and everything. So. This is something seems kind of long. I have both of them. There's no questions or comments. We'll talk again next week. Macius, if you First Vice President, if you can stay on. State President Rod Ebony, stay on as well, and discuss some things locally about a fundraiser that we've got coming up in this month. So with that, we will close out and recording. Again, last call, no questions, comments. Let's go. Close out with the motto of the organization: one God,
one God,
one aim,
one aim,
one destiny.
One destiny.
Africa for the Africans.
Africa for the Africans.
Those at home and those abroad.
For those at home and those abroad.
Race first.
Race first, family.
Race first, everybody.
Great class.
Executive meeting tomorrow, by the way. Well, not executive. President's call tomorrow.
Brother John, I'm sorry. Before you get into whatever you're doing, I wanted to talk to you real fast. I only want to take about a moment of your time. We here in Baltimore, we're looking at starting up in a whole program for training. And sitting through like your training, you have like a lot of like the questions and everything else already laid out. When given the opportunity, I think Brother Everett has your phone number, correct? I would like to get with you, man, so that we can we found like a platform, like an educational platform that we like to put everything out on so that people can go online, you know what I mean, once they join and go through like the training. If that's something that you're interested in, I mean, we don't have to talk about it right now. I know you got other things, but I'd like for you to think about it, and us collaborating together, and we'll both be able to use the platform for training.
Not a problem. It's something we can discuss. If it's for the benefit of the UNIA and for our people, it's something we're going to look at. So we can discuss it.
Okay. All right. Good night, y'all. Raise first.
See you, Lady President. Thank you for joining us. Let me stop the recording.